ladies and gentlemen, and I'm glad to see so many ladies. Makes a change in Japan. Thank you so much for coming here, for being here today. Now, today is one of those strange occasions. A presentation about presentation. Now, presentation has got two main dimensions to it. It's got content and structure, and it's got delivery. Now, in my experience, the Japanese are pretty good at content and structure. The problem comes sometimes with delivery. And it's about delivery that I want to speak to you and hopefully discuss with you this evening. Now, I imagine that this exceptionally crowded room, which I feel very, very honored to be addressing, is perhaps crowded because some of you may have thought that you would come here and learn the secrets of how to win an Olympic bid. Well, I will try not to disappoint you, but as I look out at you beautiful people, and I have had the privilege of talking to some of you before, I know that you have distinguished careers in the worlds of business, in the worlds of, in the academic world, already behind you, and I am perfectly certain, glistening futures ahead of you. But one thing you will probably not be asked to do, I'm making a guess here, is help win an Olympic bid. I think Japan has had its turn for the moment. Maybe your children will help with the 2060 Tokyo Olympic bid. So what I want to do particularly is, yes, talk a little about the Olympics and about the bidding process and my small part in that fantastic team, but particularly to focus on skills drawn from that I believe are of great value to you. And these skills I give two words to. These words are, remember them, personal impact. The impression you leave on other people when you spend time with them. And by that, I do not just mean standing up here making a presentation. I don't just mean that kind of impact. All the time we are with each other, we are making an impact. We are leaving an impression. Now, a few weeks ago, I asked a group of senior executives in London about how they should prioritize their time. So I asked them the question, how much of your time should you allocate to routine administration? Now, they said 5%, not important. How much of your time should you allocate to strategy? 30%, very important. How much of your time should you allocate to corporate governance? Also important, 20%. And on it went. We talked about financial management. We talked about succession planning. We talked about program reviews. All of these classic MBA-type topics. And then I asked them a question. I said, so how much of your time should you be devoting to the personal impact you are having on the people around you? They stopped and thought for a moment. And they said, I guess that would be something like 90 to 100% of my time. Yet it's not taught in business schools, but it is perhaps the most important thing we do. the personal impact we have on each other. And so those skills of personal impact are what I'm going to focus on this evening. And I very much hope you find that relevant and useful. Personally, I think this is a very interesting moment for Japan. The eyes of the world are on you. The mood of this country is changing. And if you can develop some of these personal impact skills, I believe that Japan will welcome the world in the most extraordinary way to a 2020 Olympic Games, which will never be forgotten. Now, let me give a little context and background. Let me give you a little time travel first. We're going to travel back in time about 4 months to the 7th of September, 2013, a day which certainly in my mind will live forever. The day when the IOC, in its great wisdom, was gathered on the other side of the Pacific Ocean in Buenos Aires, and a decision was made. Now, we all know now what that decision was. That was a great moment, a very great moment. I can tell you that from within the team, up to the last moment, we still didn't know. We didn't know what was in that envelope. And I was so stressed. There were 2 votes. There was a first round of voting for the 3 cities, Madrid, Istanbul, Tokyo. In the first round of voting, Madrid was eliminated. And then there was I think it was a 3 or 4 hour gap before we got the results of the second round of voting. I was too stressed. I had to go and lie down in the room with the lights out, the curtains closed. I could not talk to anybody. I needed to completely separate myself. And when I came back, this wonderful moment. Now, people sometimes accuse the Japanese of not being very passionate. But this is what happened. And I draw your attention. This week we've had the announcement that Mori-san is likely to be the chairman of the organizing committee for Tokyo 2020. And some people have asked the question, is this man too old? Is this man too exhausted? Take a look at that. That's not an exhausted man. He's jumping for joy. And if the older generation was excited, I think that Yuki Ota, the silver medal winning fencer, who is a fantastic athlete and a great member of the bid team, his enthusiasm was infectious. And it really looks as though he wants to find something to bite to stop himself from screaming. And I think possibly some of you may have been watching this same moment, and probably there were some screams from people in this room as well. We all felt like screaming, but it was not always like that. It's very easy, looking back at this, to think, well, of course Tokyo was going to win, wasn't it? But no, not of course. Another bit of time travel, February 2013. Istanbul in the lead. June 2013. No clear favorite, according to the IOC, following the evaluation commission visits to all 3 cities. September, just 2 days before the final presentations, and we got this bombshell. For those of you who don't speak Spanish, anyone speak Spanish? No Spanish speakers today. Okay, for those of you who don't speak Spanish, this says that 50 of the 98 members of the Olympic Committee have promised to vote for Madrid. Promises. They even had the names and faces. This was in El Mundo, one of the biggest circulation newspapers in the world. So right up to the last minute, were we certain? No. In fact, for a long time on this bid, Japan did not look like the favorite. At the beginning of the bid, we had a message about Tokyo being safe, a safe pair of hands. We talked about the safety of a strong economy. We talked about the safety of a city with very little crime and high personal safety. We talked about the safety of our fantastic Tokyo infrastructure. We talked about the number of medals that Japanese athletes had won in 2012. Come here, we know what sport is about. We talked about the extremely low level of doping in Japanese Olympic history, the lowest in the world. No recorded incident in the entire history of the modern Olympic Games. Over 100 years, not a single Japanese athlete in more than 100 years of the Olympic Games has tested positive for drugs. Extraordinary, safe, but boring. And the truth is that human beings make decisions, yes, with their heads. They want the rational choice, but also with their hearts. They want the emotional choice. And if we look at the International Olympic Committee, this is particularly true. Think about the choice of Rio. Was that the logical, safe choice? No, no. It was an emotional choice. Let's go to Rio. Let's have a party. Let's take the Games for the first time in history to a South American country. A big, emotional, appealing, world-changing, history-changing narrative. And then Japan says, we're safe. So, nevertheless, we got those votes. 60. This is a photograph. Don't ask me how I obtained this photograph. I have my secrets. I'll share some of them with you, but not all of them. This is the final vote, 60 for Tokyo and 36 for Istanbul. So how do we get there? How do we get from it's the safe, boring choice, not sure, Istanbul, the first time we would put the Olympics into a majority Muslim country. What an opportunity. Let's make history. Madrid, all its Latin passion. Fantastic. Go to Madrid. It's a dynamic, fun, exciting place. How did we get from being just the safe bid to this? We got there because we were able to put the passion with the rationality, to put the head and the heart together. Now, that's very important, because if your head is pointing in one direction and your heart is pointing in the other, then very often, we know from the Olympic experience, the heart wins. We had to get those two things pointing in the same direction. And at the risk of giving you a little academic theory here, and I think you get that probably from other speakers, you don't need it from me, I'd like to, for a moment, tell you about the work of this man. This man is Albert Mehrabian, now Emeritus Professor of Psychology at UCLA. And he did some very interesting work in the 1970s, so a long time ago, very pioneering work, which has been, I think, misrepresented and misunderstood by many people. Let me try to give you my own interpretation, my own understanding of the work he did. Remember, we are talking about how you get the head and the heart, the emotion and the reason working together. Well, Albert Mehrabian had a very simple intuition. He thought, if I make a statement such as, I love you, if I make that statement, which is a rational statement, I love you, if I make that statement with neutral emotion, how will it work? How will it be perceived? How will it be successful? If I make it with positive emotion, how will it work? How will it be received? If I make it with negative emotion, so I'll try it on you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Now, we see this a lot in politicians, this gap, when they say, I'm really excited about this. I'm really excited about this. But if they say, I'm really excited about this, you believe them. So the gap between the emotion and the reason is terribly important. If you bring this gap together, you win. I'll try it with another one. The phrase is, what a fantastic audience you are. Okay. What a fantastic audience you are. What a fantastic audience you are. So what is going on here? Well, there are three things going on. There are the words. There is the tone of voice. And there's the body, the eyes, the face, the hands. When they all work together, it's fantastic. And when they don't, disastrous. So, back to Albert Mehrabian, this wonderful man. He broke his data down into three elements. The visual, how you look. The vocal, what your voice sounds like. And the verbal, the words you speak. Now, I'd like to ask you in a moment to put your hands up in response to some questions. So get ready for it, because I am expecting you to put your hands up, okay? The first, so let's take visual, vocal, and verbal. Let's think there is some balance between these in terms of how important each of them is in making an impression. So, my first question is, who would think that these three things, how you look, what your voice sounds like, and the words you speak, are all of equal importance in making an impression? Do we think these are of equal importance? Anyone who thinks they are all equally important? Anyone else? Right? So, a few. It's a minority, but some. Who thinks that the words that we speak are the most important thing? Huh? Who thinks that how our voices sound is the most important thing? More, many more. And who thinks that the visual impact is the most important thing? Now, Albert Mehrabian could have saved himself a lot of time by coming to this room. Because you speak with wisdom. The visual, in his data, accounted for 55%. The vocal for 38%. The verbal for 7%. Personally, I slightly distrust figures these exact. We have a title for this talk which is about the art and science. Don't get too hung up on the data. There is more art than science in this, but it is worth remembering how important that is. And what that really means is that words are 7% and other stuff is 93%. Now, what do we do with this? How do we take these interesting insights and turn them into something that helped Tokyo 2020 and that can help you? Well, this is the moment when I have to tell my secrets. And I should say that I'm publishing a book next month in Japan. This is my commercial. And a word from our sponsors. And that book is called Personal Impact, and that book will tell you all the secrets. But I'll be very generous and give you one or two now. And the trouble is, I have to tell you, it's very simple. What you need to do, the most important thing you need to do, is you need to decide the mood you want to create. Once you've decided the mood you want to create, you can begin to take control of it. 3 years ago, I had a meeting with Ishihara-san, who was then still the governor of Tokyo, and who had, of course, been the sponsor of the 2016 bid, and who was the original sponsor of the 2020 bid. And I knew him because I'd worked with him on 2016. And I asked him a question. He knew that this question was coming because he knows my method. So he prepared his answer already. But my question was this: Governor, what is the mood for Tokyo 2020? And he had prepared his answer. It was one word. I like one-word answers. They're easy to work with. Shining, he said, shining. I want that mood. I want Tokyo to shine. Now that was unbelievably helpful to me in my coaching project, because it meant that every single time any of the presenters, any of our team were not shining, I could say, What does shining mean? Shining means giving out energy. It means giving out warmth. And it means giving out friendship. It means passion. And every time our team looked a bit tired, or looked a bit bored, or looked a bit negative, or was not looking happy and friendly and energetic, I could say, you're not shining. So that's the biggest secret I can give you. Decide the mood you want to create. We all need to create different moods. You may be speaking to your boss. You may be speaking to your professor. You may be speaking to your daughter. You may be speaking to a colleague. You may be speaking to your date. Decide the mood you want to create and take control of it. And I'm going to give you another secret. This is how to take control of it, which is very simple. Now, we all have, I believe, a magic, mysterious device, which all of us carry about with us all the time. And in fact, I probably left mine in my coat. A smartphone. This is the real secret. Switch the video camera on your smartphone. Start talking. Film yourself. And then take a look. Play it back. Play it back. Do we remember what's important here? It's not the words, it's the other stuff. So play it back without any volume. People can hide behind words. Play it back to yourself without any volume and ask yourself that question. Is that person communicating the mood that I wanted to communicate? Maybe that mood was about challenging. Maybe it was about inspiring. Maybe it was about arguing. Maybe it was about thanking. So many moods we need to create. But check yourself. Take a look at yourself. Now, what happens when you do that is you see a gap. There is a gap between the mood you want to create and what you will see. There is always a gap. If I play this footage back, which some kind people are filming tonight, I will look at myself and say, there's a gap. I didn't quite get it. Here I could have got better. Here I could have got better. Athletes do this all the time. They're always filming themselves, playing it back, looking at every single move, analyzing it, watching it. What can I improve? What can I improve? And we don't need fancy technology to do this. We all have it in our pockets. This gap, and understanding this gap, is what it's all about. I have a client in the UK, Vodafone. In the UK and around the world, they have 140,000 people working for them in 150 countries with 170 million customers. And the chief executive of Vodafone, an Italian, Vittorio Colau, came to me. And he came to me and he told me why he had come to me for help. He's a cyclist, a semi-professional cyclist. And he, every year, he tries, if he can make time in his very, very busy diary, he tries to be part of a race in some mountains in Italy. It's the Dolomiti, the Dolomites. Very beautiful mountains. And he's quite a celebrity in Italy. And so he was being followed on this race by a TV camera. And on the last day of the race, he had done a fantastic time, amazing time. He said, I felt like Superman. I felt like I was 21. I felt on top of the world. And the camera came here, and I gave an interview as I jumped off my bike. And I had never felt so energetic, so full of life, so young, so vigorous in my life. And then, when I was recovering in my hotel room, later that day, with all the aches and pains of a middle-aged man, I got a text from a friend, and it said, check out this link. And there I was on YouTube. It had already gone onto YouTube. And I looked at myself, and I saw this tired, old, cold accountant. And I felt the gap between who I was in my mind and what I saw on the screen. And then I knew I needed some help. I want you to help me close that gap. And we can all work on closing that gap. And we close that gap by going back to the visual, the vocal, and the verbal. The visual, how we stand. Do we stand with energy? Do we stand with confidence? Our eyes. Are we using our eyes? I'm not just talking about that tired old subject of eye contact. Are we using our eyes precisely? Are we using them with energy? Are we using them to communicate our warmth? Our smile. Are we doing a politician's smile? Or are we smiling properly? Our hands. These are God-given gifts. Now, one of the things that makes us human. Are we using them? Not just for the sake of using them. We've all seen the chief executive who presents with the basketball method. They're always holding an invisible basketball. It means nothing, but they like holding that ball, and they keep holding it, sometimes for about 30 minutes. And they will not let that ball go. Oh no, that ball is safe with them. Using our hands intelligently, expressively. That's the visual. The vocal, how we breathe particularly. Breathing is a very, very underestimated skill. There is the Metropolitan Police, who I was reminded of by the beautiful chimes of Big Ben, which welcomed this presentation. The Metropolitan Police in London has a training exercise, and it is this. It is a training exercise for young recruits. And they say, you are in a crowded underground carriage. And it is rush hour. There are pregnant women around you, businessmen, children coming back from school. And there is, out of the corner of your eye, you spot someone and you are certain that that person is a terrorist. And you know that terrorists keep weapons and bombs in their backpacks. And you see that person reaching towards their backpack, and you have a gun, and what are you going to do? By the way, it's very unusual for policemen to have, and women to have guns in London, I assure you. We're not quite as safe as Tokyo, but we're not as dangerous as some other places. Well, all sorts of answers come back. People say, pull out the gun and shoot. People say, tell everyone, drop to the floor. Say, you're under arrest. All these different answers you can imagine. The answer is breathe. Until you breathe, you can't trust your voice to do anything. So you might try to say you're under arrest or drop to the ground, but you say, no! You might try to pull your gun out and do something with it, but unless you breathe, your body doesn't have the energy, because we need oxygen, it doesn't have the energy to do anything with that. You say, And also breathing gives you a moment to think. Now, the relationship between energy and breath is terribly important. I'll give you a very small example from the Tokyo 2020 bid. One very important thing we needed to communicate in our final presentation was the passion of the Japanese people for the Olympics and for sport. This was important because the polling levels of public support in Tokyo for the Olympic Games up to that point had been very low, lower than Madrid, lower than Istanbul. It looked to the International Olympic Committee as though the people of Japan were not that excited about having the Olympics here. This matters because if the people of the city are not excited, then when the world comes here, they're not going to have a very exciting time. We had one killer fact to go against that argument, and that killer fact was the athletes' parade in Ginza. The London 2012 homecoming parade, when 500,000 people came out onto the streets on a weekday in Ginza to welcome those athletes, something that Tokyo has never seen before. So we had this fantastic fact, but what was very important was how we deliver this fact. Remember, the fact is the word. It's that little slice of the pie. It's the 7%. The 7% is 500,000 people turned up on a weekday. But the message, the other stuff, the real message, it wasn't 500,000 people. The real message was passion, the passion of the Japanese people. So it was vital that we communicated it with passion, with excitement, to share the excitement. Now, those of you who have kids, or who know kids, will know that when one of your children has done something amazing at school or with their friends, they'll come back and they'll be so excited. They'll say, Dad, Dad, you won't believe what happened today. I won the swimming cup. And they're breathing so fast because they are excited. So, in order to share the excitement of this moment of Ginza, we did the same thing. It was Yuki Ota, our great fencer. And he had these words, 500,000 people turned up on a weekday. And you could say it just like that, 500,000 people turned up on a weekday. But no. We worked very hard with Yuki on this. He worked very hard with me on this. And if you look at the tape, you will see him take 3 different breaths, and you will see him use his whole breath 3 times on 3 words. So this is what you get. You don't get 500,000 people came out onto the streets of Ginza. You get 500,000 people came onto the streets of Ginza. And by controlling his breath, he controlled his heart rate, he controlled his excitement, he communicated the passion. So the 7% was having that statistic, 500,000 people. The 93% was in how he used his breath and his voice. And then finally, the verbal. I don't want to talk about the verbal. The truth is that if the verbal supports the mood you want to create, then you're in business. And when those 3 things come together, that's what you get. You get Japan's favorite word. And sometimes people say, oh, the Japanese, no, they don't really do body language. They don't like looking directly at you. They're not very expressive. But then how come this, which is one of the most expressive things that we've ever seen, becomes Japan's favorite word? People think, no, that's just for international audiences, that you do all of this personal impact stuff and you get emotional and you use your hands and you do all of these things. No. That worked for the IOC. It worked for an international audience. But it also worked for a Japanese audience. Maybe we're not quite as different as we sometimes think we are. But all of this raises some specific issues and problems for Japanese people. You know what I'm talking about. Now, just 2 evenings ago, a Japanese friend, and I went for dinner. And we went to a seafood restaurant, a very good seafood restaurant. He said to me, is there anything you'd particularly like? Any particular Japanese seafood you like? And I said, well, actually, I don't know any Japanese, by the way, but I do know a few names for food because I'm quite greedy. I said, you know, the thing I really love having in Japan is uni. He looked a bit surprised. He said, oh, very extreme taste. Not many foreigners like that. And I said, in rather a kind of proud, boastful way, oh, I'm not typical. And he said, oh, don't worry. That's not a problem. I understand. Only in Japan would I get that reaction. Because I was being the nail that stands up. I was being the not typical person. So he was telling me, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. And so much of this personal impact and so much of the work that I did with the Tokyo bid is about standing up, not being afraid that someone with a big hammer is going to come and knock you down. And the lesson of Tokyo 2020 is that people can stand up, and instead of being hammered down, they might just win. Not bronze, not silver, but gold. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'd be delighted to take your questions.
Hi, I'm a technical trainer. I was just wondering, in a technical presentation, where the focus is on the technical part, on the facts, how much importance should be given to the visual and the voice?
Okay, Thank you very much for your question. In a technical presentation, when the emphasis is on facts, arguably the emphasis is on the 7%, not the 93%, yes? How much emphasis should be given to other things? There is a danger here. There is a paradox. Because on the one hand, of course, you do not want to be so emotional in your presentation that you disguise the facts, or that it looks as though you won't let the facts speak for themselves. But if I look at, for example, let's take in an Olympic context, the most detailed set of presentations, the ones which had the most technical role to play, were the week-long presentations in the Palace Hotel here in Tokyo. A week of presentations to a small panel of high-level executives from the International Olympic Committee, and presenting every day a team of between 10 and 12 people from the bid. And that includes the head of police in Tokyo. It includes the prime minister. It includes the man who runs Tokyo's metro system. It includes university professors. It includes all of Japanese society. And so much of the detail they're providing is detailed technical information. What is really important about that? Well, you can send information by email. You can send in a report. What matters when you're in a room with people is, do I trust these people? Do I believe them? Can I have a working relationship? If I bring the Olympic Games to Tokyo, I will be working with the head of police. I will be working with the man who runs presidential security. I'll be working with the guys who run Tokyo Metro. So can I have a good working relationship with them? Can I trust them? And if you think, I don't know if you've ever had to interview other people for jobs. You have? Yeah? Okay. So yes, you'll be looking at their technical qualifications. You'll be looking at their academic qualifications, their professional qualifications, their experience. But I put it to you, and I'm happy to be challenged on this and proved wrong, but I would suggest to you that your decision of who to give a job to, who not to give a job to, is based to a very large extent on chemistry, on a feeling, is this person someone I can have confidence in? Will this person be a good member of a team? Is this person honest? Is this person brave? Will this person survive under pressure? So the facts begin to be important, but in the background. Even when you are deciding on a crucial member of your team, and what you're thinking about is the personal chemistry, the impact that that person has had on you. So I would say that even in those situations where apparently it is all technical, never, ever underestimate the power of personal impact. I hope that answers your question.
I need a couple of advice from you in terms of helping the athletes and preparing them for the 2020. Because if they're good with the skills as an athlete, let's say when they win the gold, then when you give them the mic to just represent their country and show that passion and that happiness that I am so grateful I won the Olympic gold medal or silver medal, or it doesn't matter really. But how they represent the brand of Japan, it's been something that really I want to do, something to add value to them and help them. What would be a couple of advice that you give me on that?
Thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure to have you here. And as you say, we managed to exchange a few words before, and thank you for that. And also, it's scary having a professional in the audience. May I give two suggestions there? but I suspect you're way ahead of me on both of them anyway. The first is that as coaches, we're in a very, very lucky position dealing with athletes. Put a coach in front of a politician. The politician definitely doesn't think they need a coach. You have to work very hard to persuade a politician that they need coaching. Put a coach in front of a business person. Most of them think, I don't need a coach. I didn't become chief executive by needing coaches. Put a coach in front of an athlete, and an athlete says, tell me, what do I need to do? They get coaching. So the first thing is, we're ahead of the game when it comes to working with athletes. And I wish that some politicians and business people would learn that same lesson. But the second thing is that athletes work incredibly hard to improve their performance all the time. And I'll repeat a theme, really, of my presentation. I remember I've had the privilege of doing a lot of work over several years with Koji Murafushi, whose name I've probably just pronounced slightly wrong, forgive me, the great gold medalist and world champion, and an absolutely wonderful human being. And Koji was coached by his dad from a very early age. His dad also was a champion hammer thrower. And right from the early days, in the days of old cine film, Koji's dad would take his camera and film young Koji from the age of 7, 8, 9. Film young Koji. At that time, they had to wait 2 weeks for the films to be developed and come back. And it's not like now. You point and click and show and you're there. It's real time. And so my technique, which I happily give to you, though you probably use it already, is that athletes are incredibly used to being filmed and to seeing themselves. And all you have to tell them is remember 3 things. What is the mood you want to create? The mood they want to create is the mood of the Olympics. And the mood of the Olympics is based on 3 values. Anyone know what the Olympic values are? No reason why you should. Anyone know what they are? Friendship, excellence, and respect. So they need to film themselves, or you need to film them, look at themselves talking. Do they look like they're being respectful? Do they look warm and friendly? Are they holding themselves with pride? Do they look as though they believe in excellence? They know those values better than we do because they are Olympians. They will know what you're talking about better than we do.
I'd like to know what happened in your career that made you want to become a coach. And the second part of my question is to be able to recognize the special things of, like, for example, Japan. I'm sure you'll have to be able to have an open mind to be able to respect or realize the differences or the specialty that stand out that you could devote passion into. And how did you accumulate this skill?
Thank you very much. And I have to say, it sounds like you have a completely fascinating job. I'd love to know more about that. In fact, let's switch jobs. No. You invite a personal question from me, and that's always a dangerous temptation to indulge in autobiography, and I need to be careful of that temptation. You're a tempter. But it's actually very simple. I've done various things in my life, but one of the things that I did for many years and still do to some extent, is work as a speech writer for politicians, for business people. And I began to learn that I could write a speech that, in all modesty, I thought was completely brilliant. And I could write another speech that I knew just was not much good. But I couldn't predict how the audience was going to respond when the politician or the CEO spoke these words. That great, historic, world-changing speech that I wrote could completely die, flat, empty, make no impact at all. And then this thing that I thought was rubbish, suddenly the room came alive. And I realized there was a big gap between the words and the delivery, between the 7% and the 93%. And I, because I guess I like big numbers, became more and more interested in the 93%. So that's how I became a coach. I saw how important it was. You also ask about issues relating to Japan. I'm slightly in two minds about this question. Partly, I want to say, do you know what? We're not that different. You know, we're all human beings. We fall in love, we get inspired, we get tired, we get exhausted, we find energy, we lose energy. We discover a vision, we follow it. We lose it, we find it again. We're all human beings. And I'm not sure that we are that different. It's interesting that these same skills that we saw working for an international audience, I think when Japanese people see them, they don't say, oh, that just works outside. No, we don't want to be so passionate. They say, can we have a little bit of that, please? Can we bring a little bit of that into our own lives? I don't think we're so different, after all. The other thing I'd say is that I'm in a very lucky position because a lot of people, a lot of foreigners doing business in Japan or working with Japanese people, they find that they have to come towards the Japanese. And that's a very difficult bridge to build. A lot of people find it very difficult to build that bridge from them to the Japanese. I'm in a slightly different position because I say, you need to build a bridge to me. And I think Japanese people are pretty good at building bridges. If I look around Tokyo, there are some pretty impressive bridges. And when Japanese people decide to build that bridge to this topic of personal impact, to take some of these lessons on, they do extraordinary work. Not so different after all, maybe. We have our three questions, and thank you. We have some really, really important questions. One about the use of English and some of the complexities around that. One around slides and what I sometimes call death by PowerPoint. And something about nervousness as well. These are really basic, important, quite deep questions. I very much sympathize with your question about English. And in fact, one of our speakers, Inose-san, the former governor, bravely decided to speak in English, which he does not speak naturally. And I think he must be something like some of the people you were thinking of. Now, we had a lot of debate. Should he speak English? Shouldn't he? Ultimately, I think it was decided that if he spoke it, well, ultimately, he's a big man, and he decided for himself. But his decision really showed his courage. He was going to put energy. How do you show your energy? How do you show that you are a hard worker? If you're governor of Tokyo, you know, you sit there, other people do the work, you know. You sit there, you're important. How do you show you're a hard worker? You're a team player. Well, you do some hard work. And he's worked hard on his English. Now, the other thing which is very important to note is that I think that a lot of Japanese people like to make things perfect. There's a kind of culture of perfection. And there is a phrase that possibly you may know, which is that sometimes the perfect is the enemy of the good. You have to let people know, if you are coaching them, and it seems to me you probably are, you have to let them know it's okay to make some mistakes. People are not marking you for, oh, he pronounced that wrong. Oh, she said that with a funny accent. Oh, her R's and her L's are all confused. Please. What they want is the mood, the atmosphere. I'll tell you an example about this mood. I'm afraid it's not in a Japanese context. But in corporate life, those of you who know corporate life well will know that for a listed company, for a limited company, listed on the stock exchange, one of the most important pieces of communication is results, the annual results. And in theory, back to your question, these are clinical, technical detail. In theory, what people should be saying is, very interesting third quarter from Brazil. That's what the financial analysts, the financial journalists, the major shareholders, in theory, that's what they should be saying. They're not saying that. They're saying, it looks like the chairman is about to have a heart attack. Did you see the chief executive and the chief financial officer are not talking to each other? They are looking at the team. They're looking at the dynamic. They're looking at the mood of these people. So the thing to do is to get them to worry a little less about making the English perfect and a little more on thinking about the mood they want to create. People will go away not remembering every word that the great president said. They will go away remembering, he seemed like a really exciting, energetic guy. Get them to focus more on the mood and less on worrying about their English. You also asked a question about last-minute changes, etc. Now, again, don't get too hung up about this. Last-minute changes are always a bad idea. Get the script fixed as soon as you can. And even if that script is not ideally what you want, it does not speak as directly as you want, get it fixed so that you can stop worrying about the English, start worrying about the mood. And your third question about the question and answers. I think that Japanese people, again, they're perfectionists. They want to answer questions in detail. They want to think exactly what is that question, and I will find the exact right answer. Well, don't worry too much about that. Prepare yourself with some answers and think about the mood you want to create. If you want to create a mood of respect, then respect the people who have asked the question. But take it as an opportunity for you to tell them what you want to tell them. Yes, don't ignore their questions, but understand that you are in charge. You have got the opportunity to tell them what you want to tell them. Just as I was determined to tell you about annual results meetings. I knew I wanted to talk about that. I would find my moment to talk about that. You gave me an opportunity to talk about it. It doesn't directly answer your question. It helps you a little bit, but it helps me a whole lot. Slides. As I say, there is this danger of death by PowerPoint. And there is a phrase in English about people talking to their slides. I will now talk to my slides. And they go and they have a good old chat with their slides. Their slides are suddenly their best buddy, yeah? Because they can't face it's something that you just need to practice. Now, the thing is that the slides, they don't sit there like this at you. They're your slides. You made them. Yeah? They're beautiful. You know them. They're your friends. You know them. You worked on them. You spent hours developing them. You're happy. You're in touch with something you know. And what you have to do is you have to let go and say, my new friends are not the slides. My new friends are the people in this room. You're the people that I want to make friends with, not my old slides that I worked on. And you need to take your slides and, frankly, throw most of them in the rubbish bin, because people won't really pay that much attention to them. All they'll do is create a nice little comfort zone for you to basically talk to yourself. And you have to ask yourself. This is something that I set as a challenge to a lot of people. You know, we all have finite lives. 70 years, 80 years in Japan, 100 years, clearly not 70 or 80. And when people, as you have done this evening, 150, 160 of you possibly, all of you, you have finite lives, you know, in 50, 60, 70 years. That's it. You won't be here. Possibly there'll be reincarnation for some lucky ones of us. And these moments that you've chosen to spend in this room will never come back to you. So you have given me the most precious thing that you can give me. You have given me some moments of your precious lives that you will never have again. There is nothing, no more precious gift that you could give me. Now tell me, if you have given me this precious gift, and I spend my whole time talking to my slides, then what am I giving you? What am I giving you back? You've given me the most precious thing that I could ever have from any human being. It's up to me to give you 100% back, 100% and more back. So forget your slides. Yes, they're there. Yes, they're helpful. Yes, they sometimes bring a little point to life. But the real thing is to spend time with other people. The real thing is personal impact. Nervousness. Now, we all suffer from nervousness, and it is a very unnatural thing to do, to stand up in front of a group of people for, it's over an hour now. And I'm standing here, and you're all sitting there, except for a few kind people who are standing at the back. And it's very unnatural. We learn to communicate, not through doing this kind of thing. We learn to communicate in the following way. Our mums and our dads lean over us in the cot, in the cradle, and they say, ga, 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 ga. And we start saying, ma, 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 ma. And suddenly we start saying, mama, mama, and da, 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 da. And they say, eh. They get very excited, and then they put it on YouTube, and we're embarrassed for the rest of our lives. This is a curse for this generation now. Thank God most of us don't have our baby moments on YouTube. And so we learn through exchanging. And suddenly we're up here, standing, presenting, and there's no exchange. And it's all a bit cold, and there's no feedback, and people are looking like this, and you're thinking, oh my God, I want to get out of here. And this is when you start feeling nervous, and when you feel nervous, what is the first thing that happens? You start to breathe rather nervously, and it begins to get a bit difficult, and you start to sweat, and then you start to shift around on your feet, because really what your feet are doing is saying, I want to get out of here. So you have to learn to take control, not of your mind, but of your body. That's how you deal with nervousness. You need to learn to plant yourself firmly. Stand strong like an oak tree in the forest. You need to learn to breathe properly and control your breathing. And when you do these things, your body begins to calm down, and you begin to have confidence, and you begin to think, you know, actually, my body is telling me it's good to be here. And when your body starts saying, it's okay, relax, root yourself, you're strong, you're planted, breathe strong, then your mind begins to follow. So the thing to do, and too many people think that communication is an intellectual game. It's not, it's a physical game. It is a physical game. It's one reason why it's also such a privilege to work with athletes on it, because they get that. And so you need to think more about your body and a bit less about the blah, 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 blah that's coming out of your mouth. That will take care of itself if you feel good. So my suggestion to you is a little bit of exercises in posture, a little bit of exercises maybe in some physical discipline like yoga or something like this, things which bring you into your body. And a lot of exercises on good, strong, deep breathing. And the rest will take care of itself. People are supposed to be naturally good communicators. You know, we all have conversations, don't we? We go to the bar with our friends, we chat with our family. We're talking all the time. We have friends, we have family, we get on with them. Well, aren't we having a good impact? We have colleagues. We don't hate all our colleagues. Not all our colleagues hate us. Some of them do. Our boss might even like us sometimes. So, in theory, we kind of don't need to worry about this personal impact stuff, do we? It kind of takes care of itself. We're human beings. We know how to do it. And I think this is why, because it's such a sort of basic part of being human, that we don't even think about it. We don't give it the time it needs. And one of the reasons that I think now, in this generation, it's probably more important, and I don't want to sound portentous, but more important than ever before in the history of our species. And it's this. Here comes the big portentous reason why. And that reason is speed dating. Now, we live in a speed dating world. We have very little time. I'm amazed that so many of you have been able to make the amount of time you have this evening, and I feel really honored for that. And we actually have the luxury of some time to get into some real issues here. But how often does that happen? How often does that happen? We are in a very, very, very fast-moving world where we are making judgments about the people around us very quickly. And when you do speed dating, it's one shot. You don't get a second chance. And unless that personal impact is spot on, no second date. No ticks in your boxes. Now, I talk about speed dating, but I think so many of our aspects of our lives are a little bit like that. We have these very, 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 very quick encounters, and we have to make up our minds about people. And our judgment is based on the impact they have on us. Do they look scary? Do they look friendly? Do they look strong? Do they look energetic? Do they look excited? Do they look poetic? Do they look dynamic? Do they look challenging? Do they look tough? What do they look like? How do they come across? What is the impression we get of them? And we make decisions on that basis all the time. And so, it's basic human nature, but because it's so basic, we kind of don't put it on our syllabuses. We don't worry about it. We don't think about it. Until suddenly something happens, like it happened to Vittorio Calau. He suddenly found the most enormous gap between the person he was in his head and the actual physical reality of how he was coming across to people around him. And he said, okay, it's a bit like having a heart attack. Okay, finally I get it. I need to take some control here. I need to take some control of my communications health, my personal impact health. I hope that begins to answer your question. I'm not sure it does. I'll ask you whether it does. It helps. That was a very polite answer. Okay, moving quickly on. The international context. Now, I have a very little experience of this. I have a very little experience of this myself. Another absolutely fascinating job, by the way. And I sense that our international post-conflict resolutions and negotiations could not be in better hands. I have very little experience in this area myself. I worked, not directly, but I worked with some people, Shell, the big oil and energy company, are one of my clients. And they have a very well-practiced internal discipline of narrative scenarios. You're probably familiar with this. And in fact, it was Shell, the oil industry, pioneered by Shell, who led the world in this idea of developing alternative scenarios. They have to consider, if they're going to make an investment in a country, the payback on big oil investment is 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. You don't get a quick hit. You go in and you pump money in and you pump money in and you pump money in before you can stand a chance of starting to pump money out. And so you need to get your geopolitical, your environmental, all of your scenarios. You really need to understand them and you really need to work on them. And the team that I had the privilege of working on at Shell included a couple of professionals who had done some work which you may well be familiar with in South Africa. And this was work done quite quietly before the end of the apartheid era. And that work had the following kind of dynamic to it. We were coming from a base where there were the trades unions, there were the churches, there was the ANC, then there was Umkhonto we Sizwe, the armed wing of the ANC, and there was the national government, the apartheid government. All of these different players, all in their own entrenched positions. And everyone looking on at South Africa and saying, okay, we know apartheid is going to come to an end, and then there will be blood. The streets will run with blood. It will be one of the biggest massacres in history, as the majority takes over from the minority and punishes the minority for the terrible things that the minority has done for so many years. Everyone in their own little corner. Typical in these narrative positions. I have my narrative, you have your narrative. And you go on. You just sell your narrative, don't you? And you have, we see it in Syria at the moment. There's one side selling their narrative, another side selling their narrative. Russia selling its narrative, the States selling its narrative, Britain selling its, France. And what you need to do is, instead of all looking at your own narrative, is you need to find a way to look at something together. And what they did with the scenario planning in South Africa was this. They got people to imagine. They got these different people, the unions, the churches, the apartheid government, the ANC, the armed resistance into a room and said, okay, well, let's imagine this was, what, 96, 97, 1996, 1997. Let's imagine South Africa in the year 2020. Huh, interesting date. Here's a South Africa which is a rainbow nation where people live together happily. Here's a South Africa where every trace of white people has been eradicated from the history and from the country. We have sent them all away. And here is a South Africa where blood has been shed. And thousands and hundreds of thousands of the old white minority lie in graves. Let's look at that South Africa in 2020 and think about, okay, so what would the economy look like? What would the churches feel like? What would, so trade unions, let's talk a little bit about how the economy would be, whether your workers would have jobs. Let's talk to churches. How would your congregations, your faithful people, how would they feel? How would they be? What would be the health of the faith of the nation? Let's talk to the white minority, the party in power at the moment. How would their people feel in this or that or the other? Let's talk to the ANC. What would the black majority feel in this situation, this situation, this situation? And suddenly you unlock things because you're all looking at the same thing together. Instead of I'm looking at my thing, you're looking at your thing. I have my narrative, you have your narrative. Let's look into the future. Let's look at a narrative about the future. I had a personal example of this. I'm sorry I'm going on about this question because I think it's very, very important. I had a personal experience of this in Iraq. I was asked by the US Department of Defense to go into Iraq at the end of the coalition invasion, basically British and, American and British invasion of Iraq. Which one can have many political views on whether that was a good idea or not. And my job was very simple. I was there for a week. I had to spend the nights in an air raid bunker because there were rocket which was going on night and day. It was quite scary. And by day, we were 50 of us in one of Saddam Hussein's old palaces. And our job was to answer the following question, a question which I'm being reminded takes us to the end of our time. And I must ask anyone who needs to leave at this point to feel very, very free to leave. But I will, if I may, continue a little bit.
Thank you very much.
Yes? Okay.
How many more questions can you take?
Well, I'm going to finish these questions, okay. And then I think maybe one more question and we're done, if that's okay. So the question we were trying to solve there is the following question. How are we going to get the Iraqi people to come out and vote? We're just about to hold an election. It is very important that this election, the first free election in Iraq, that it's a success. There are three reasons why the Iraqi people are not going to come out and vote, and these are the reasons. One is, it's very dangerous to get out of your house. You might get shot on the way to a polling booth, particularly by the forces of destabilization who do not want this election to happen. So am I going to go out of my house and risk being shot? Am I going to, is my wife going to go out of the house and I'm going to be happy that she might get shot? My granny, my there? Second thing, what is an election? We don't even really know what that's about because for many years there'd been one candidate. Third, well, why should I bother to vote anyway? Because all of these politicians who are standing, clearly they're just in the pay of the Americans. And they're not really going to represent Iraq and my needs, my people. How are we going to get people to come out and vote? Well, This week-long workshop was kicked off by a general with many, many stars, a US general with many, many stars. I've lost count how many stars he had, but there were a lot. There were a lot. It was like looking up into the sky. And he said, "Ladies, gentlemen, it's very, very good that you've all come here to be part of this workshop. But let me save you some time. Let me tell you the message that is going to get the Iraqi people to come out and vote. And the message is fear." Generals, huh? You're probably a bit like that with your students, about telling them why they should come to class. And I said, thank you very much, General, for that interesting intervention. Now let's have a discussion about that. I'm sure we'll all come to agree with you. And that's a typical kind of post-conflict thing. You know, my narrative is fear, 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 fear. And the message that we came up with in the end was very, very simple. And it was 3 words. And those 3 words were, Iraq will win. Not the British-American strategy for Iraq will win. Not the politicians will win, or this party or that party. But the country itself will win. And if you come out and vote, you will be part of helping Iraq win. Creating a vision of the future, a positive vision of the future, which instead of people looking at each other and their little problems and their differences and their worries and their fears, that you can focus them on something in the future, which is hope. And I forget the exact percentage. I think we got 68% of the Iraqi people turned out to vote. Now, since then, which was absolutely extraordinary. Since then, of course, things have not gone so well in Iraq. I was proud to be part of that, but things have not gone so well. So I can't pretend that a narrative solves everything. There are many factors in life, and narrative has its part to play, but it doesn't solve all the big problems. And then finally, Professor, your technical question about gestures in the Olympics. Now, may I answer with a quick story? A story about Ishihara-san, the former governor of Tokyo, a great character, as many of you all know. And I remember working with him in Copenhagen for the 2016 Olympics. Not easy, but we began to get along, and he worked on his English. We said, relax about that, let's concentrate on the mood. And he said, okay, right, we'll work more on the mood. Let's get a bit of that smile going. Not an easy thing for Ishihara-san to smile readily in public. We got a bit of the smile going. And then his English relaxed a little as well, because he was concentrating on the mood. And then he said to me, of course his brother was a famous actor, and he said to me, enough of this talking about the script and everything, now I want to work on gesture. Well, do you know, in all my years of coaching, no one had ever said that thing to me before. I was quite taken aback. But then he is a surprising man in many ways, and an original man. And I said, okay, that's a challenge. Let's work on gesture. Okay, then we'll do it. We'll work on gesture. Now, I know, because one of the things I've done in my life is advertising. And when I was a junior person, a junior copywriter, working in an advertising agency, a very senior, very wise art director took me aside. He didn't quite beat me up, but he might as well have done. And he said, whatever you do in advertising, young man, remember this: make the words and pictures match. Now, if you put that alongside the idea that a picture is worth 1,000 words, or whatever that old cliche is, then the important thing, if we're creating a gesture, is we're creating a picture, aren't we? And it's worth creating a picture about something we want people to remember. So I asked Ishihara-san, okay, you want to work on gesture. You tell me, what is the most important thing you want people to remember about this bid? He thought a bit, and he said, do you know what? The thing I am most proud of in this bid is the environmental project that we have within this bid. Now, I know there was a lot of controversy about the fish market and this, that, and the other, but he had made a commitment, and he had begun to plant this forest, which would create a full carbon offset for the carbon footprint of the games. So he was very, very proud of this. He said, yeah, that environment, you know, the environmental credentials, remember, it was at the time of the UN climate conference in Copenhagen, so it was on everybody's minds very, very much. It was pre-crisis, so we weren't all, or just pre-crisis, so we weren't all running away from the environment because it's too expensive. And so I said, okay, right, let's take that. You want people to remember this environment thing. You've got this story about the forest. And he had these words in his script, which were, we have planted a forest. You can't quite see what I'm doing with gestures here, but you'll have to kind of make up for the bits you can't see. So we're gonna take that phrase, we have planted a forest, and we're gonna make a gesture around it so there's a picture, because a picture is worth 1,000 words, and people will remember the picture. So how do you plant a forest? Well, you could do this, couldn't you? But this looks a bit silly. Let's be honest, it looks a bit silly. So what do? They thought, maybe you do something a little bit more gentle. Maybe you take a seed. Yeah? You have a seed in your hands. And maybe you drop that seed into the ground. And maybe then a tree begins to grow. Maybe that's the suggestion. We looked at it. So we began to look at it, film it, play it back, film it, play it back, check it. Does it look ridiculous? Does it look theatrical? Does it look natural? Does it look good? Ishihara-san, are you happy with it? 59 advisors, are you happy with it? And there it was. We have planted a forest. Now, we looked at it, we checked it. He said, yeah, that's good, we'll do it. After the presentation, after the votes, I was speaking to some members when, obviously, Tokyo did not win, clearly. I was speaking to some members of the IOC, and one of them, a very, very senior member of the IOC, he said to me, Martin, thanks for your work on Tokyo. It was a good presentation. It's pity, it's pity they didn't win. Rio was the right choice. But, Ishihara-san really made us think. He really made us think about the importance of the environment, the fact that they planted this forest. He repeated the gesture. He wasn't aware he was repeating the gesture. But a picture is worth 1,000 words. And was every single gesture in the presentation in Buenos Aires, was it pre-programmed? Was it timed? Was it rehearsed 50, 60 times? Was it played back on camera? Was it scrutinized? Was every pause timed? When Mami Sato said the word cancer, and she said, I lost my leg to cancer. And then she let 4 seconds pause for the dark experience and emotion of that terrible word to build in the room, to build in herself. Was that coincidence? No, every single last detail, choreographed. So yes, we worked very hard on that stuff. Do you know, I knew that someone was going to ask me this question. Now, there is a phrase in English, and I'm not sure how well this will translate into other languages, especially Japanese, but you probably in Japanese have a phrase very like it, which is that the cobbler's children, cobbler is a shoe mender, or shoemaker and a shoe mender, it is the cobbler's children who always have no shoes. Do you have a phrase like this in Japanese? I'm sure you have a phrase in Iranian. Is there a phrase like this in Japanese? So never trust the expert to do what he says. All I knew coming here is that I wanted to respect the gift you have given me, the gift of your time. So the mood I wanted to create was a mood of respect.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much.